The story continues, as Roxy urges Corpse to draw his sword and challenges him to a fair duel. Fate is bewildered by this unexpected request, but Mia dismisses his feigned innocence. She discloses Corpse's extensive criminal record, consisting of 56 violent incidents with other warriors and 20 cases of property destruction. Corpse justifies these actions, claiming they were all in self-defense, but Roxy refuses to accept any excuses. Roxy is determined not to let violent acts go unpunished, and suggests that Corpse's only option is to join the royal army. She assures him that once he becomes a part of the army, even the rowdiest warriors won't dare to confront him. However, Corpse expresses his dislike for being a follower, emphasizing the importance of his freedom for happiness. Roxy explains that if he rejects this option, he'll need to reflect on his actions in a jail cell. Fate rejects this idea as well and opts to draw his sword instead. Roxy points out that Fate's scabbard may break during the fight, but Corpse dismisses the concern, stating that it's specially made. The two engage in a fierce battle, and it becomes evident that Roxy is not holding back. Although Fate believes he should have the statistical advantage, he struggles to overpower her. Creed explains that Roxy's skill comes from daily training as a holy knight, surprising Fate. Fate is further shocked when Roxy targets his mask, threatening to expose his identity. With a powerful attack, she nearly severs his head, warning him to take the fight seriously if he wants to avoid exposure. In response, Fate decides to get serious and surprises everyone by preparing to use the Holy Sword technique skill, even though he shouldn't be able to use it without a holy sword. Fate reminds everyone that his scabbard is special. It's like an extra part for his weapon that makes Holy Sword techniques better. He made it using magic crystals from the Great Ravine. Roxy wonders if he used to be a holy knight, but Fate says he's just a warrior now. He starts a strong attack and seems like he's going to win. But then, Fate notices that Roxy made a necklace from the gem he gave her, and it distracts him. Roxy takes advantage of this and knocks his sword away. Greed spins around, calling Fate an idiot for not paying attention. Corpse admits he lost, but Roxy wants to know why Fate eased up suddenly. Fate acts like he doesn't know what she's talking about. Roxy wonders if Corpse learned his fighting style from someone named Sir Aaron, as his strikes and footwork remind her of Aaron. Roxy recalls Aaron talking about a powerful traveler who gave him trouble, and she wonders if that was Corpse. Corpse says it doesn't matter and tells Roxy to focus on being able to protect herself in Galia. Fate starts to leave and thinks about how kind Roxy is. Even in danger, she's thinking about him. Mugen talks to Fate about chimeras being controlled. It's weird to see one monster controlling another. Mugen explains that his family has studied Lost Gallian technology for generations. Corpse suggests that Mugen's daughter examine a chimera, but Mugen thinks Corpse is just trying to meet her. Mugen believes Corpse has bad intentions and promises never to let someone like him date his daughter. In another place, there's a girl named Rain, and she hears that the Valeric heir, Raphael, is going through a tough time after Hato died. There are rumors that Raphael has locked himself in his room to study something called the Philosopher's Stone. Rain looks it up and discovers that the Philosopher's Stone can heal any wound and give great power to its owner. However, in exchange, it takes control of the owner's mind and body. Back at home, Fate remembers something Mind told him. She explained that Fate should aim for something called the Domain of E, which is the power level of the Divine Dragon. If Fate can't reach that level, he won't be able to fight it. The only problem is that if he pushes too hard, his skill will overwhelm him, and he'll lose control. Suddenly, an alarm sounds, and Northern informs Roxy that a massive stampede, also known as a death march, is happening. Roxy plans to intercept it and orders her troops to get ready to march to Galia. Fate goes to see the death march for the first time and notices that Roxy has arrived with the royal army. Greed, always the one with a sharp tongue, wonders if Fate plans on being the hero again. Fate is confident that Roxy can handle the situation, but wants to be ready just in case. He enters a half-starvation state, and Greed points out that he can control it much easier than before. Suddenly, Greed reveals that something is approaching the royal army from the east. This thing is moving underground like a swimming whale. It's huge, and if it continues on its path, it will end up right beneath the royal army. They are distracted by the death march and vulnerable to a surprise attack. Fate turns Greed into a bow and uses his Gluttony skill to make the attack more powerful, doubling its range. It's a special move he can only use when he's really hungry. Greed praises the attack, and a huge slime monster, with the same emblem as the other controlled monsters, appears. Fate wants to figure out what's causing all this and gets ready to attack. Fate analyzes the monster and sees that it has very high stamina, magic, and spirit stats, all over 10 million. Greed warns that even a holy knight would have trouble against it. Greed transforms into a shield to protect Fate from the monster's acid rain, which would be deadly if it touched him. But using a shield means Fate can't fight up close. Fate decides to share some of his stats with Greed and shoots a fire arrow, hoping to evaporate the monster. Unfortunately, the slime splits in half, partly avoiding the attack. The slime dives into the ground and heads straight for the royal army. Fate follows it but has to destroy some baby slimes that suddenly appear. This is a tricky move, not something a regular slime would do. Fate then finds where the creature will come out and prepares to destroy its core. He gives Greed even more stats this time for a stronger attack. Greed is surprised because Fate is using a move they never practiced before, but Fate shoots the arrow anyway. Just before it hits, something else seems to hit the slime first. Fate doesn't know what it was, but he's relieved to hear his Gluttony skill activate. Shockingly, the slime is still alive, and Fate can't understand why since he took its soul. Fate notices someone watching him, wearing a perception-altering mask just like his. He thinks it might be Eris and attacks to expose her. Greed realizes this person has a weapon called the Black Gun Sword Envy. Greed explains that the slime was hit with a magic bullet that brought out latent power, which is why it's still alive. Without a core, the slime can now replicate infinitely, making it an even bigger threat. The slime engulfs Fate, and Greed worries that Fate is in trouble. Fortunately, Fate emerges soon after, and Greed realizes that Fate must have figured out the slime's corrosive magic. Now, the slime won't be a problem for Fate anymore. He goes to confront the mysterious person, and his Gluttony skill activates. However, Greed warns him not to overdo it, as a sudden increase in stats could drive his skill into overdrive. Despite the warning, Fate is determined to take down the mystery person. Fate launches an arrow, but it's swiftly deflected. Greed reveals that Fate has reached the maximum human stats and needs to aim for inhuman heights, the domain of E, to go further. This suggests that Fate's attack failed because the person he's fighting has already reached the domain of E. In his rage, Fate attacks, but the mysterious person tells him it's a waste of time. Fate realizes it's not Eris. The guy fires from his weapon, and Fate pulls up his shield, but he still takes damage. Fate understands that the boy is much stronger. The guy approaches to finish Fate off, but Fate refuses to give up, willing to sacrifice everything. He demands that his Gluttony skill give him the power he needs. Both of Fate's eyes turn red, surprising the mystery man. Fate has achieved the domain of E, and now he's super confident. He thanks the man, as encountering him led to this new level of power. Fate becomes offensive, ignoring the slime. The man tries to shoot, but Fate easily dodges the attacks, creating a smokescreen. Finally, Fate destroys his mask and shockingly finds that it's Norden. Norden strangely states that Fate is half right in calling him Northern, but refuses to explain. Instead, he starts playing a flute, leaving Fate wondering about the boy's odd actions. But Norden says Fate will soon understand. Suddenly, Fate is shocked to see the Divine Dragon approaching, heading straight for Roxy. Northern warns that it will reach her in the next 30 seconds. Norden declares that he and the Divine Dragon will do everything to kill Roxy. He challenges Fate to give his all to stop them and shoots several shots at Fate. While the slime corners him, Greed points out that Norden is just trying to buy time. Fate ignores everything and rushes past. The Divine Dragon frightens everyone as it finds Roxy. Despite the fear, Roxy stands before it and asks her father for strength. She regrets not running as the dragon unleashes a powerful attack. Everyone worries for her, but fortunately, Fate arrives to rescue her once again. The powerful dragon uses another incredibly strong attack, and Fate does his best to stop it, refusing to let it harm Roxy. However, his mask is completely destroyed. Without turning around, Roxy begins to wonder if he is Fate. Fate can't keep it a secret any longer and turns to Roxy, greeting her as Fate for the first time in a long while. This brings an end to our episode.